Yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized for such time as he may consume.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in support of my bill, H.R. 685, the Mortgage Choice Act. As someone who has worked in the housing industry, this is a very important issue to me, and more importantly, to all of our constituents across the country. Last year, the Qualified Mortgage, or QM, ability to repay rule, as mandated by the Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform Act, went into effect. Nobody has a problem with that. But the QM rule is the primary means for mortgage lenders to satisfy its ability to pay requirements. Additionally, Dodd-Frank provides that a QM, qualified mortgage, may not have points and fees in excess of 3% of the total loan amount. As it's ambiguously defined currently, points and fees include, among other charges, fees paid to affiliated but not unaffiliated title companies, and amounts of insurances and taxes held in escrow. As a result of this confusing and problematic definition, many affiliated loans, particularly those made to low and moderate income borrowers, would not qualify as QMs and would unlikely be made or would only be available at higher rates due to heightened liability risks. Consumers would lose the ability to take advantage of the convenience and the market efficiencies and choice offered by one-stop shopping. I, along with my good friend Representative Gregory Meeks from New York, reintroduced H.R. 685, a strong bipartisan bill that would modify and clarify the way that these points and fees are calculated. The legislation is narrowly focused, very narrowly focused actually, to promote access to affordable mortgage credit without overturning the important consumer protections and sound underwriting required under Dodd-Frank's ability to pay provisions. Having been a licensed realtor and coming out of that industry, it didn't take those of us who had been in the industry long to see that there was significant problems with the structure of what had led to the housing crisis in the last number of years. And I tell the story oftentimes. My first closing that I did, where a check was slid across the desk, across the table to the seller, and then a check was slid across the table to the buyer. And the closing agent really didn't even know what to say. It was the first time that they were starting to get into these zero down or even 120% loan to values as what was happening. And I thought to myself, this is not going to end well. And that is the case. And we need to have that tightened up system. But I think it's important to know that, that we have some issues with that Dodd-Frank provision. This is one of those. I do also believe, Mr. Speaker, that it's important to note that when we first introduced this bill in 2012 in the last Congress, it looked substantially different. However, working with my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, I made the decision to make the changes necessary to gain their support of the legislation. As a result, it's been a truly bipartisan effort at every step of the way in the legislative process. That is why this very legislation unanimously passed both the House Financial Services Committee and the House of Representatives last Congress. In fact, as we dealt with this bill again, the new bill, H.R. 685, it passed out of committee 43-12 after I think some had decided that they were going to be against it after they were for it. And it seems that the White House and others in Capitol Hill and on Capitol Hill have decided that rather than taking care of consumers and rather than trying to make the bill work, they've decided that it is a citadel that cannot be breached and not a jot or tittle of Dodd-Frank can be changed. Otherwise, they label it as bailouts and helping out Wall Street and all these other things. The real truth of the matter is, Mr. Speaker, is we are trying to make sure that real Americans can obtain the American dream and buy and own their own home. Specifically, our bill, H.R. 685, would provide equal treatment for affiliated title fees and title companies and clarify the treatment of insurance held in escrow. When things are held in escrow, they don't belong to the owner. They don't belong to the bank or the title company that's holding it. All they are doing is holding them to then pay for that insurance bill that's going to be coming due. They pay for the insurance or the property taxes that may be coming up. And what happens when someone writes that check every month, they're putting 1/12 of that total payment in every month into that escrow, and it just begs to be clarified. Well, these common sense changes will promote access to affordable mortgage credit for low and moderate income families and first-time homeowners by ensuring that safer, properly underwritten mortgages pass the QM test. Whether or not you support Dodd-Frank overall or specifically within this area, it's clear the law is going to require some tweaks to ensure qualified borrowers aren't locked out of home ownership and the beneficial features of a qualified mortgage. The QM represents the safest, best underwritten mortgage availability on the market. It's the gold standard, Mr. Speaker. We should want more people getting QMs, not fewer. Quite frankly, this is something that we should all agree on, and as I pointed out, we did last term, and our bill doesn't touch any of the CFPB's strict underwriting criteria. It doesn't in any way suspend a lender's legal requirement to determine that a borrower has the ability to repay that loan. And, Mr. Speaker, this body has the opportunity to help more Americans realize a portion of that American dream, as we talked about. You know what the best part of it is, Mr. Speaker? We don't need to pass a grandiose law or decree. All we need to do is work in a bipartisan manner, and I think the American people are begging for that, and here's an opportunity to do that. We have done it, and to reform a burdensome regulation that is negatively impacting our constituents is something that we should all strive for. So I'd like to thank my colleague, Representative Meeks, along with many of the others on both my side of the aisle and the other side of the aisle, that have worked tirelessly to help fix this flawed provision currently being implemented in Dodd-Frank. I urge my colleagues to vote in support of H.R. 685, and help make the dreams of their constituents come true and a reality by ensuring that all consumers have greater access to mortgage credit and more choices in credit providers. And I reserve the balance of my time.